In Palestine, the health ministry reported that the death toll from the continuing Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip increases to 28,663 and the number of wounded to 68,395. Venezuela's Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez met with the President of the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, Sergio Díaz Granados. In El Salvador, 245 social organizations demanded that the Attorney General's office drop the charges against 5 environmental defenders from the Santa Marta community. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, the health ministry reported that the death toll from the continuing Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip increases to 28,663 and the number of wounded to 68,395. The ministry said in a press statement that the Israeli army killed 87 Palestinians and wounded 104 others during the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Palestinian medical sources reported that 10 Palestinians were killed in Israeli raids during the past few hours on the Al-Sawtun and Al-Sabra neighborhoods in Gaza City. The sources added that 6 Palestinians were also killed in an Israeli airstrike and artillery bombardment on the Tal al-Satar area in the town of Havalia, north of the Gaza Strip, and the wounded were transferred to Kamal Adwan and an Indonesian hospital. The Israeli airplanes and artillery also bombed several homes in the Nuseirat, Bureij and Maghazi refugee camps in the central Gaza Strip, killing dozens of Palestinians and wounding others. Palestinian Minister of Health warned Friday that Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis is being subjected to an ongoing crime of genocide by the Israeli occupation army. The government official accused the Israeli forces of aiming to destroy the Nasser hospital and getting rid of everyone inside by using every possible means, including airstrikes, detention of the medical staff, forcing the displaced shelter in the facility to leave, and blocking its medical services by cutting off its power. The minister stressed that the Nasser Medical Complex constitutes the backbone for providing medical services in the Gaza Strip, so stopping its work was a disaster in the full sense of the word. The minister slammed the Israeli army's aggression and described it as a barbarity and war of genocide waged against civilians, patients, institutions, medical centers and hospitals in Gaza and the West Bank, including Jerusalem, and as a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law, international law and all humanitarian norms and conventions. The attacks in In Lebanon, Hezbollah leader Sayed Hassan Nasrallah gave a speech on Friday to commemorate the anniversary of the martyred leaders of the resistance. In his remarks, the Secretary General of the Lebanese Islamic Resistance Movement, Hezbollah, stressed that the sacrifices of the resistance movements do not arise from an emotional state or a temporary reaction, but rather from awareness, perception, and knowledge of the objectives. Nasrallah pointed out that the Israeli aggression that took place in Nabatea and Sawaneh is an event that must be stopped in the current confrontation because it targets civilians. According to the senior Hezbollah official, the enemy's aim in killing civilians is to put pressure on the resistance to stop, because all the pressure since October 7th was aimed at stopping the southern front.
It is natural that the fighters of Hezbollah and the Ahmad movement will fall martyrs in this battle, along a front that stretches more than 100 kilometers. Hezbollah is not obliged to enter into the equation of response and reaction based on the testimony of the fighters, because we are in an open stop a battle. The objective of Israel by killing civilians is to pressure the resistance to stop supporting Gaza, and the response to the massacre must be to continue and intensify the resistance work on the front line.
Hezbollah leader Sayed Hassan Nasrallah confirmed that the Palestinian resistance made Israel live in an existential crisis after the Al-Aqsa operation.
The resistance in Palestine made Israel live an existential crisis, and the climax was the Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. If the Palestinian people had surrendered 75 years ago, the people of Gaza would have been out of it, and the people of the West Bank would have been out of it, and Israel would have had power in the whole region today. So the cause of resistance made Israel, the United States and NATO tremble, and that is what the people of Gaza did.
Likewise, the Secretary General of the Hezbollah resistance movement emphasizes its missile capacity, which allows it to reach Israeli cities for the defense of the people of Palestine.
Our precise missile capability allows us to reach the Israeli cities of Kiryat, Shimona, and Eilat. Now, I also refer to the Yemeni people who continue to attack the Israeli ships despite the American and British aggression against Yemen. The response of the Yemeni resistance to the Americans would be to insist on the objective of preventing the ships from reaching the Zionist entity and not to go to another battle.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Venezuela's Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez met with the President of the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, Sergio Díaz-Granados. The purpose of the meeting was to review the work agenda that Venezuela has with the financial institution, both national and regional, in order to advance the economic and social development of the country. Rodriguez reaffirmed the will to continue working together with the bank. On the other hand, the financial institution maintained its commitment of advising and providing financial support to the public and private sectors of the 18 member countries. On the other hand, the Executive Vice President met with the Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Stuart Richard Young, at the Ministry of Finance headquarters. During the meeting, they reviewed the map of energy cooperation and joint projects in strategic areas such as the agreement for the exploitation and export of gas not associated with the Dragon field in the Paria Peninsula. Likewise, both officials met to review the collaboration and solidarity between the two nations. In El Salvador, 245 social organizations demanded that the Attorney General's office drop the charges against 5 environmental defenders from the Santa Marta community. Members of several organizations indicated that they are requesting that the case be dismissed because it makes no legal sense. At the same time, they affirmed that after 13 months of investigation, the prosecutor's office has not been able to present any evidence to incriminate the environmentalists. The organization also presented a document where they expressed that the situation is not a legal case, but a case of persecution that seeks to silence the voices of those who have expressed their rejection of the mining projects. In this sense, the environmental leaders remain under house arrest, so the organizations demand their definite release. In Paraguay, protests continue against the dismissal of opposition legislator Katia Gonzalez on February 14th. The demonstrators denounced the existence of an authoritarian government led by former President Horacio Cartes, to which they claim the government of Santiago Peña is subordinate. They also demand respect for democracy and institutionalism. In this sense, the participants denounced that the senator accused of alleged improper use of influence was condemned without being notified, and in violation of the internal regulations of the Senate chamber. They also emphasized that these governmental decisions contravene the laws stated in the Constitution.
The national constitution was totally ignored, and this group of people is doing what they want. Even though one can say, you know what, if Kata did this, it is in the constitution. If Kata did do this, it is written in the constitution. She didn't need more votes either. I swear that every time I speak, I am left without understanding that this really happened. All the people that are here, I think that they think in the same way, not only with this, but with all the things that came before.
On Friday, Argentina's President Javier Milei announced that there would not be an increase in the minimum wage for teachers, nor would there be a negotiation of an increase in payments to cope up with the inflation. In this way, President Milei assured that he does not intend to sign a decree to update the minimum wage. For his part, he emphasized that it is a matter that has to be addressed by the workers with their employers, indicating that the teacher's salary depends on each province. On the other hand, Milei alleged that inflation is being brought down and speculated that in the first 2 weeks of February the index could be 10%. It should be noted that the vice governors of Buenos Aires, Catamarca, La Rioja, Jujuy, and other territories have expressed their disagreement with the measures taken by the new administration in their nation, in particular suspending the payment of the National Fund for teaching incentives. In that order, the Argentine Energy Secretariat published new bill charts for energy consumption with increases ranging from 65 to 150% in the provinces of Buenos Aires. The Argentine National Electricity Regulator assured that the increases are to warranty service standards in view of the need for investment. These increases are in addition to those of public transportation services and food, whose prices have been constantly raised since President Javier Milei took office in December 2023. After the end of the Wage Council meeting, Argentina still don't agree to raise the minimum wage. Now it is expected that the government of Milei will define by decree the new income of the workers. In view of this measure, the businessmen represented by the Industrial Union and the Confederation of Medium-Sized Companies rejected the union's proposal to increase the minimum wage, while the Workers' Union proposed an 85% increase as from February 1st. In Cuba, the 32nd edition of the Havana International Book Fair continues, honoring the intellectuals Isabel Monal and Francisco López Sacha. The event, whose guest of honor is Brazil, presents 3 million physical books, 2,000 digital titles, and 6,000 volumes exhibited by the guest delegation. This edition has the usual attractions, such as the Children's Treasure of Paper Pavilion and the Provisional Salon that includes as a novelty the reading classrooms space dedicated to students. The fair has as its main venue the historic military park San Carlos de la Cabaña and will last until February 25th in the capital, to later extend to the west, center, and east of the island in March. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, the Department of the Federal Penitentiary Service of the Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous District reported the death of Russian blogger Alexei Navalny, included on the Federation's list of terrorists and extremists. Reportedly, Navalny, 47, felt unwell after a walk and lost consciousness, and doctors pronounced him dead. According to the Kremlin, the causes of Alexei Navalny's death will be determined by doctors. In August 2023, the Moscow City Court sentenced Alexei Navalny to 19 years imprisonment on charges of extremism. He was found guilty of crimes of creating an extremist organization, making public calls of an extremist nature, creating a non-profit organization that violates the rights of citizens, financing extremism, and involving minors in life-threatening actions. Also in Russia, the government denounced the supply of long-range weapons to Kyiv by the European Union. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov rejected the intentions of the European Union to send projectiles to Kyiv with the aim of taking actions against the Russian capital, Moscow. Lavrov assured that the negotiations for the cessation of the conflict are getting further and further away because the Ukrainian government must cancel the decree that prohibits dialogue between the two countries. The official specified that the Russian leadership is in an open negotiating position on the situation with the Kyiv government. He also emphasized that the West intends only to prolong the conflict by supplying arms. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva continues his tour around African countries and arrived in Ethiopia with the purpose of strengthening bilateral relations. After completing his agenda in Egypt, the president was received by the Ethiopian Chancellor Taye Asque-Selassie, with whom he discussed issues of common and multilateral interests. Lula da Silva is expected to attend as a guest at the 37th Assembly of the African Union to be held on February 17th and 18th in Addis Ababa. Brazil's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that President Lula is expected to address several topics during his trip, including the fight against inequality and hunger, the energy transition, climate change, reform of international institutions, and the expansion of trade between Brazil and African unions. In India, dozens of farmers traveling to the city of New Delhi on Friday were repressed by the political authorities. Indian farmers clashed with police officers at the border of Shambhu, Haryana, who blocked their entry to New Delhi with tear gas. Meanwhile, the farmers are camping near the Shambhu border 200 kilometers from New Delhi. Farmers in the states of Haryana and Punjab also staged protests at the toll booth of the main highways with the support of some trade unions. United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund (UNICEF) warns about the lack of social protection to children in low-income countries. Globally, 1.4 billion children aged from 0 to 15 lack any form of social protection, leaving them vulnerable to disease, poor nutrition, and poverty, according to new data released by the International Labour Organization, Save the Children, and UNICEF. In low-income countries, less than 1 in 10 children in this age group have access to child benefits, highlighting a significant disparity compared to the coverage enjoyed by children in high-income countries. Child benefits are a critical form of social protection intended to promote the long-term well-being of children. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English,